Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to We Watch Shudder. My name is JD, and who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
Yay, it's
Yay.
Michelle. So, it's, you know what we do here on We Watch Shudder. It's right there in the name. We Watch Shudder.
We do, usually.
Specifically, yeah, we talk about new, original, and exclusive releases from that horror streaming service. Are not affiliated with them in any way. We all pay our $6 a month just like anybody else. But that's what we do, except
value.
Michelle. What happened this week?
This week, Shudder heard about our podcast and they got so upset that they decided we're going to stick it to them. We're not going to release an original or exclusive movie just for these two people.
Yeah, that tracks. That seems like the kind of reaction they would have.
We're very, very important people.
Well, then what are we going to do this week?
Well, since our podcast is fairly new, I thought we could maybe talk about when horror was fairly new to us, kind of like the child years of horror.
That was a very clever way you tied those two things together, Michelle. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're just look, guys. We're just gonna do kind of a little bit more of a kind of a getting to know you situation. You guys obviously have heard our opinions on several original and exclusive Shudder releases over the last several weeks, because obviously everybody listening to this has clearly listened to every other episode we've already released, right?
They should. They definitely should. They're all great.
But no, we just thought we'd take some time to talk about our history with horror and how, how we got into horror movies, some of our favorites, just that experience of coming to be horror movie fans, so you can get a little bit more insight into where our opinions and stuff come from. Look, here's how this is going to work. This was Michelle's idea, so she's going to start. Michelle?
Yeah.
Tell us some things, man. Fill us in on your history of horror.
Yeah, so I grew up in a household where my uncle was 13 years older than me. Hi, Jeff. He's definitely listening. And he is a huge horror fan. And he would babysit me, and I would go over to my grandma's where he lived. And he constantly watched horror movies. So I was exposed to them from the time of being a tiny, tiny baby.
Wait, is that Jeff who used to work at Discontent and was also on the radio,
is.
Jeff?
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
that
I
is
remember
Jill. Yep.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah, he is an amazing dude. And
I bought a weed pipe from him way back in the day.
I believe it. He's one of the coolest people I know. I love him so much. And he also instilled this love of horror. So I actually messaged him when I got the idea for this episode. And I asked him, when I was a tiny baby who was too young to be watching movies, what did you show me? And the list he came up with was A Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, Phantasm, Friday the 13th, anything John Carpenter, including The Thing, Prince of Darkness, Big Trouble in Little China, Christine, Halloween 1 and 2, Hellraiser, Aliens, Creepshow, which is one of his favorites, Salem's Lot, House of a Thousand Corpses, The Lost Boys, The Amityville Horror, Popcorn, 976, Evil, and the Scream movies.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't remember when I started watching horror, because it was just a constant thing at our house. My mom is a huge Stephen King fan. So when she realized that I wasn't afraid of horror, we always had sci-fi on. I watched Cube once a week. We watched Carrie so many times. So I was just constantly watching it. And I don't remember sitting there as a child watching some of these, but it does make a lot of sense because the list he sent me does include some of my all-time favorite horror movies. And now I'm realizing wow, that might have just been ingrained into me as a child. So
man, that's an entirely different experience from me as a kid with horror. I didn't see a lot of horror movies as a kid, and it wasn't so much because my parents were entirely against it or whatever. Mostly we only had one TV in the house for most of the time I was a kid, and my parents didn't like horror movies, so we were just going to watch what they wanted to watch, and they just never really happened. But I very clearly remember the first thing that I saw as a kid that was somewhat horror-esque or horror-like I was over at my neighbor's house, and we watched Troll, the first one, not the second one with the Nilbog and all that nonsense that everybody says is so bad it's good. No, the first Troll. And if you've seen that movie, it's super weird. And looking back on it now, I watched it again a couple of years ago, and I don't know that it really holds up. As a 6-year-old in 1986, it was pretty fucking intense. I had a lot of fun with that movie. But other than that, like, again, not a lot of things. I did manage to bump into, I remember specifically, Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And at some point, I also saw Friday the 13th Part 7. And so I had some familiarity with Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. And I had friends who all got to see more horror movies than I did. So I had an awareness of what was going on there. But it wasn't really until junior high school when I met my very longtime good friend Aaron Baker and his twin brother Brandon, that the doors really opened wide. Aaron was the first person I ever met. Dude, this guy. I met him when we were 12 years old, and he already had like a 50 or 60 VHS collection. Like, the kid is like talking about, Clerks and Reservoir Dogs and these early 90s indie movies when we're in 7th and 8th grade. It's so weird, but he opened my door to a whole lot of stuff. So from there it was, I don't know, there's some other things we can get into, but I'm going to throw it back to you. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's funny because despite growing up with all of these horror movies, in junior high is where it actually became like, oh my God, I love these so much. Because it had just kind of like just always been on the TV. I was never really afraid of horror movies. I just kind of liked them. They were kind of just like on all the time. And then I dated this guy in high school, and I spent a lot of time at his house, and his brother was into what I would kind of consider obscure stuff because the internet wasn't as easy to use to find these movies, but he really introduced me to basically everything Trauma Films had to offer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the first time I saw the guinea pig films was with my boyfriend's brother. I watched Suicide. Yeah, when I was 14 years old, I watched Suicide, which I just got on DVD. It came in the mail like 2 days ago, and I love it. That's when I started watching. I think I watched the last horror movie in high school, but that might have been like a 2013 release. Anyway, I started like really, really getting into like the, oh my God, this is emotionally devastating stuff. And I was like, this is amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The real heavy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, a couple of things happened right around junior high for me as well. I met Aaron Baker specifically. And I also finally got my own TV in my bedroom, and I was allowed to watch whatever I wanted to watch, and it was fine. But there are a couple of movies just in particular that, like, and I saw a bunch of different things, but a few that just obviously resonated heavily. And the first one, which is still to this day, I will tell you, in most cases, my single very favorite film of any genre of all time is John Carpenter's Halloween. That was a movie when, like, the first time I saw it, there was just something different about the way it was made, just the style of it and the intensity. And that movie really, really stuck with me and still has to this day. I've seen it a jillion times. And the other one, which is also on some days my favorite movie of all time, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Same.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre fucked me up.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I watched it, I think I was 17 or 18 years old, and I watched it by myself at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it fucked fucked me up in a way that no other horror movie had ever at that point. It's famous for that, for being so incredibly intense. But yeah, it just so over the top and heavy and brutal. But also very much manipulating your own imagination and making you do a lot of stuff to yourself that never actually happens, which I thought was really, really, really impressive. But then, of course, like the 1970s horror movies are some of like that to me is almost sacred ground. You know, you've also got movies like The Exorcist and specifically Dawn of the Dead. 1970s horror, Suspiria from Dario Argento over in Italy. Just so many incredible movies. That whole time in high school, getting to see so many formative things, that was a big part of my development. I'm certain, absolutely certain, I got really heavily into like thrash and death metal because I got into horror movies. I feel like there's definitely a certain amount of crossover there. Also, a certain amount of crossover because I got into both of them because of Aaron Baker.
It's funny that you mentioned crossover, because on my list of things I wanted to talk about is I love horror movies. I grew up watching them. I never get scared of them. But another thing that Jeff did when I was like a small child and I would have to stay home sick from school or something is he would play horror video games. And I would watch him complete Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Clock Tower, all these games. And I was terrified of video games. I love watching playthroughs of horror video games. I do not play them myself. I tried playing Alan Wake and I chucked an Xbox controller across the room. I don't do it, but I have this huge love of watching horror video games as well, because I have like that love of horror, and video games are just so different and scare the shit out of me.
I don't play a lot of video games myself. That was one element of sort of geeky culture that never sunk in my family or in my life. But I do have similar experience. Interestingly enough, it's another Baker story.
I was going to say Aaron Baker?
No, his twin brother, Brandon. Brandon plays still to this day a lot of computer, like specifically PC video games. And he got this game back in the 90s in the CD-ROM days called, I believe it's called The Dark Eye. And it was this weird immersive sort of like Myst Seventh Guest style immersive game, but it was based on stories by Edgar Allan Poe. And there are these moments in the game where there's like reality shifts and you go from being in the real world to this weird dream world where all sorts of stuff from stories are coming true. And we sat and played that in a very dark room one night, trying to figure out these puzzle rooms and things together. And once again, that was an experience that fucked me up. There were a couple of moments where that game just blew my hair back. I don't know what it is. Something about, I do think I know what it is. People often ask, why horror? Why do people like to be scared or startled or see these grotesque things? And frankly, it's because I'm terrified of dying. I live, as I often joke about, because it's true, I exist in a nearly perpetual state of utter nauseating terror of the fact of my own mortality, and I need to confront it as often as possible before I get there. That game was intense. These movies, I don't even know what we're talking about now. You say something for a while.
Okay. I actually, since you brought up computer video games, the first horror video game that I played by myself was probably the one on computer that I was obsessed with as a kid, which was Amber Journeys Beyond. I was like 7 or 8 when we got it, and you're just this woman walking through a house trying to figure out what happened to your friend, and everything's haunted, and it's very Myst-like. So I had a similar kind of video game experience. It scared the shit out of me as a child, and yet I loved it so much. I was talking to a couple friends because I recently found out that another friend of mine is into the same sort of like horrifying kind of horror movies that I'm into, which is like a very like distinct difference between liking horror movies. Like you have to be kind of
So,
deranged and
to be clear, you're talking about things like Human Centipede 2.
I love Human Centipede too. Love it. Have seen it multiple times.
You're probably a big fan of a Serbian film.
I have watched a Serbian film. I cannot say I am a fan of a Serbian film.
Look, I've seen a lot of repulsive things in my life. A lot of really intentionally fucked up movies.
Yeah.
And a Serbian film made me want to like scald my flesh from the inside.
And you have a thing about kids,
yes.
especially. So
that movie.
I was talking to
I found my line, and it definitely exists, and that movie is way past it. Holy shit.
I was talking to this friend about like how can I even justify liking this stuff, because sometimes I'll just be bored and I'll go on Google and I'll look up like the most disgusting movie you'll ever see, the most damaging movie, the most emotionally scarring, and I go seen it. Ooh, this one's new, and I go and I find it. And I was talking to this friend surrounded by friends who don't even like horror movies, and they were just kind of like, wait, did you just use the phrase newborn porn? And I was like, sadly, yes. I was like, do not watch that movie. You're going to hate it. I don't like that part. Like, let's just, and I was telling them that it's kind of like, I am getting used to spicy food, but I don't understand people who eat ghost peppers and then they get sick and they throw up and they're miserable, but they do it so that they can brag to other people who like spicy food and go, see, I liked it. Ha ha ha. And I feel like that's kind of why I'm into watching these terrible movies, is because it's an endurance test where people can go, wow, you watched all of Salo 120 Days of Sodom without issues. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah. No, I get that entirely. I don't necessarily. I had that impulse at one time, and then, like I said, I found a limit, and I was like, no, I don't need to do this anymore. They got too hot, a little too spicy for old boy over here. So it was. Oh God, don't even. I don't want. Why did I even bring that movie up?
I don't know. You chose to. There was God, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like in the early 90s. It kind of started the found footage serial killer almost snuff film stuff. It's a trilogy. Oh my God, I'm trying to think. It was just two people who are on meth just killing
Are you
people.
thinking of August Underground?
Yes, thank you.
I've never seen it. But my friend, Nathan, who goes by the incredible name of Natanic, is a huge fan. He actually he played in a band for a while called Brutaler, and Brutaler actually went all the way, I want to say, to like Virginia or North Carolina or somewhere, and played at the birthday party of the guy who made those movies.
This is so funny because you and I run into the same kind of circles. So when I told Jeff I was trying to find August Underground, he said, oh, I know a friend in Fargo. Let me message him. And I met up with his friend in Fargo in a parking lot to exchange. Nathan? It was not Nathan. It was, oh God, why did I forget his name? I think his name was Nathan, but not the Nathan.
Was it Garrett?
It might have been Garrett.
Yeah.
I bet it was Garrett.
Garrett was the vocalist for Brutaler, yep.
And that's what I was going to say. It was one of the guys that was in that band who I had never met before. So I met up with him. I'm like, hey, thanks so much. And then I took the trilogy home, which was autographed.
Jarrett? Man, now I think it's Jarrett.
Jarrett, thank you.
Yeah.
When you said Nate, my mind like blanked because I know Nate too. But yeah, so Jarrett, I met up with him in a parking lot. I was like, thank you so much. And I went home and I binged them. And I'm like, I've had the hardest time finding this movie, and now I'm sitting here holding like the autographed copies. I was like, this is crazy. And then I watched them and I was like, wow, that was almost illegal. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
and then like
I know them by reputation, and that's exactly why I myself have not bothered to watch them.
You would not like at least one part that I was like, wow, okay. And then I met up with him again. I was like, thank you. That was a delight. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And I started talking about like these movies I like. And he's like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I like the fucked up stuff. Make me feel something. I don't feel things. I'm on too many antidepressants.
Oh man, that's yeah, I get it. I sort of maybe I understand.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Takashi Miike film called Visitor Q?
That sounds familiar, but I can almost guarantee I have not seen
Are
it.
you
I've just seen it
familiar
on
with
lists.
Miike?
No, I don't think I
Oh,
am. I'm
Takashi
Googling
Miike
right now.
is a
Oh,
startlingly transgressive filmmaker at times.
so funny enough, I had just done that thing preparing for this where I Google like most fucked up films, and
Uh-huh.
he had some stuff on that list. So yeah, his name is like very brand
Oh
new,
yeah.
familiar to me.
Do you happen to remember which ones? I'm guessing one of them was Visitor Q.
Yes.
One of them was maybe Ichi the Killer,
I was gonna say Ichi the Killer, which I have seen, was one of them on the list.
and maybe Gozu.
Oh, he
Is
did
possibly
Audition
on there.
too.
Oh yeah,
Audition is good.
Audition
Yep.
is fucked up, but that's
Yeah.
I do really really enjoy that movie.
Yeah, that is.
that one.
It's great.
It's fabulous. This just basically became a let's just ramble about horror movies for a little while.
Well,
sort
I kind of
scenario.
figured that's what it would be. This is our introduction, and we are rambly horror
It's
fan
pretty great,
enthusiasts. I think we kind of started out with like, "Hey, this is the stuff I watched as a baby," and it turns into like,
just turned into,
"Have you
let's
seen
talk about movies we
Audition
love.
with the needles?" Ugh.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
We were talking earlier also about like horror adjacent things. How do you feel about haunted houses?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't fuck with haunted houses.
Nor
Wait, I should
do
clarify.
I.
I should clarify. I do not fuck with haunted houses that are like human beings trying to scare you because I don't trust them. But
Right.
I do fuck with a house where somebody says I have a ghost and I'm like, please invite me over. Let's do a seance. I do that kind of haunted house.
I was
Yeah.
definitely talking about the first kind, whereas
Yeah.
it's like as a spooky experience, and fuck that.
Yeah. No,
I do not need motherfuckers in scary masks jumping out of the dark and screaming at me. I'm a fat man. I got heart problems. I do not need that shit in my life. Man, I've been to literally one ever in my entire
Oh.
life. I believe I was 13 years old, and I will never go to a fucking another one ever again.
What happened?
Oh, it
What
was
happened?
just I don't do well with being startled. Like I freaked the fuck out. Like things
Yeah.
just jumping out of the dark at you and suddenly bright lights. I don't do well with that experience in person. I don't know why it's different with movies. Probably
Oh,
because it's
I
actually
know.
right there.
I was going to say a movie is kind of like a theoretical possibility of something that could happen to you, but is not currently happening to you.
Right.
A man chasing after you with the chainsaw, you're like, okay, that guy's not going to hurt me. But what if he didn't take the like safety stuff? Like, what if
Right.
he didn't do it right? It's I don't trust humans to not hurt me when they are pretending that they're gonna hurt me. I
Yeah.
100% like I've gone to lots of haunted houses though, because of course my friends love them, and I am always just miserable, and I do it and I just like am emotionally wrecked at the end of it, but I'm also trying to build up a tolerance, like how I'm trying to build up a tolerance with spicy food. But I hate it. On the other hand, if I'm the person jumping out and scaring people, I have worked in haunted houses and done that, and that's so much
Oh,
better.
boo.
I know. I like being the
Boo.
villain, but being the person who's getting scared is just not fun. It's like Hostel. Like if Hostel's reversed, it's an entirely different situation.
Oh, that's a totally different film. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. oh
Oh.
man. Yeah.
Well, guys, so we don't want to take up too much of your time here. We just thought we'd sit and chat about things we love about horror and how we kind of got into horror movies a little bit. Every now and then we'll do something like this. Obviously, there are occasionally going to be times when Shudder doesn't have a new release for us to talk about. Maybe we'll come up with some clever themes, do some top 10 lists or whatever from time to time. But yeah, we just wanted to still make sure we came to you with some horror talk this week. Michelle, you got anything you want to wrap up with?
No, I think this was fun because I didn't really know your beginnings with horror until we started talking about this episode. So hearing like our very different experiences and kind of it might explain a little bit of why we have such different preferences on our horror movies too.
Have you seen Troll?
I don't think I have, and when you
Oh,
mentioned it, I
you should
realized that.
definitely see it.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, don't expect it to be good. It's because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
definitely, it's real. It did not hold up well, but
No, that's
yeah,
fine.
that's basically where it all started for me.
Yeah, I've been going back and actually watching a lot of stuff that I hadn't seen before, like The Birds and The Thing, the original one, and then also the
Oh yeah,
remake, which I know I saw, but I didn't remember them. So I've been going back and watching them, and I will add Troll to my list. And
do
I'll love it.
it.
I'll
All
cherish
right,
it.
guys. Well, we hope you had some fun getting to know a little bit about us and our horror history here. We will be back next week with another episode about another movie. I don't know what it is. I know we got it on a list somewhere. Michelle, do you happen to know what the movie will be next week?
I don't have the movie in front of me, but I do want to say that for when we do these miscellaneous episodes, if you have any suggestions, feel free to comment, message them, whatever it
Yeah,
may be. Like
yeah, do that.
this was kind of came to me right before I fell asleep. So if other people want to hear like our opinions on older stuff and it's not a Shudder exclusive or original week, I'm down to do it. People just
Right
need to
on,
tell
right
us.
on.
Yeah.
You and me both. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here all awkward like because that's how we do it. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.